on the agenda here. So we'll be talking about what is this essential hormone. Curious if anybody knows what it is yet. We're going to be talking about what it does, how you get it, how much of it you need, and how to get more of it. And again, at the end, we'll have a Q&A where you can ask questions. And at the very end, a very special offer. If you're someone who loves Native Path products, you're going to want to hang around at the very end. My team and I have a very special gift to give for you today. No, it's still okay. So we're having some issues with the Q&A in the chat. Let me see what we got going on here. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. Oh, I see here. Now try to put in the chat. Oh, for your friend. See if you can check it out now. I just made a little modification. Test. Everybody see that? Okay. Hopefully. Okay. So what is this essential hormone? Let's go to the next one here. It's vitamin D. Vitamin D. So if you can, put in the chat who here is currently taking vitamin D. And also if you could tell me how much vitamin D you are currently taking. This looks like we have a still, sorry, no, we're still having issues with the chat. So I don't know what to do, Ofri. I'll have to look into this later. But right now we're going to go ahead and I can see your questions here in the Q&A, but not sure what's going on with the chat. It should be working for everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So vitamin D. A lot of people think vitamin D is a vitamin, but it's actually not really a vitamin. It's more so a hormone. It's a hormone, and it's a precursor to a hormone. And like all other hormones, it's a messenger. And hormone sends messages all throughout your body, tells your body to do certain things. Other names for it are calcitrol or gocalciferol and cholecalciferol. Is a word mouth, right? So thing about vitamin D is no other vitamin goes through the process of activation that vitamin D does before it can be used by the body. So it's an incredibly powerful hormone. And I equate it to a hormone that if you get that right, if you get vitamin D right, it makes all the other health issues that are going on with your body that much easier to fix, because vitamin D really helps you start absorbing all the other vitamins and minerals in your body. And something else to know is that we all make vitamin D if we get adequate sunlight. But unfortunately, as we'll talk later on, most of us don't get near enough sun exposure in comparison to what our ancestors got. And this is why I say it's really the #1 most important supplement. And I know that sounds crazy, especially someone who's so crazy about collagen, but I view it's even more important than collagen because we're so deficient in it. And when you get it right, it makes such a big difference in your health. And most Americans simply do not get enough vitamin D, not near enough in comparison to our ancestors, not near enough the way that we're living in our modern culture, you know, mostly inside all the time, working jobs in front of a desk, not being exposed to the sun. Most people are incredibly deficient, and we're suffering a lot of health consequences that I'll talk about in a second. So I'm a big fan of getting supplementing and getting tested when it comes to vitamin D. As we'll talk later on, how much you take really depends on your skin pigmentation, where you're at on the earth, and also your current levels of vitamin D. So it's important to know where you are. So I'll be laying out how much, the different areas that tell you if you're deficient, insufficient, if you're getting adequate vitamin D, or if you're excess, and really the areas of what you should do there. So before I go on, I've got some more Q&As, and tell them to type questions in the Q&A. Yeah, so Aaron had a great point here. If you can, just type questions in the Q&A, not in the chat. They're two separate windows, and that might be what's happening. So please put your questions in the Q&A as we move forward. And again, I'll try to get to them while we're going through the webinar, but I'll also get to them at the very end. So hopefully that helps. So that's what is vitamin D. Let's talk about what vitamin D does. Most people, when I ask them what vitamin D does, they really don't know. They just know it's something that's good for you. But it does a lot of things. Really, there's not much it doesn't do for your health. But let's point out a few here that it does and maybe get your attention on some things. So one thing it does is improves your ability to burn fat. So if you're someone who's looking to lose weight, get rid of the skin under the arms, if you got the belly thing going on, no matter how much you eat right or how much you exercise, you can't seem to get rid of that. It could be that you have a vitamin D deficiency. And vitamin D is very helpful in speeding up your metabolism. Vitamin D is also incredibly important for you boosting your natural immunity. And we've just gone through this huge period where we had a pandemic and COVID. Pretty much the whole earth is really suffering from this pandemic. But the other part of that is we have a vitamin D deficiency that's also a pandemic, and it's making our immune systems really weak and more susceptible to something like a virus. So it's really important for boosting your natural immunity. It's also important for increasing fertility. If you've got any moms or dads out there that want to have some babies, vitamin D is going to be very important for that. And it also improves insulin resistance. Now, if you've gone through our native body reset, or you've seen some of my other webinars, I talk a lot about insulin resistance. Insulin is a hormone that gets secreted by the pancreas. And when we get into insulin resistance, typically that comes from the overconsumption of refined carbohydrates. We can't put the insulin in our cells the way we need to, so we start producing more and more and more of it, and our cells get resistant to insulin. And that process, what that does is it sets us up for a whole host of metabolic issues like obesity, heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, even type 3 Alzheimer's, some cancers and things like that. So insulin resistance is one of the base root things that cause a lot of the diseases that we face in our culture. So vitamin D is going to be very important for improving insulin resistance and reducing your risk for a lot of these metabolic diseases. It's also incredibly helpful for type 1 and type 2 diabetes. I just mentioned that a little bit with insulin resistance, and also reduces your risk for any cardiovascular disease. And remember, cardiovascular disease, #1 killer in the United States, ahead of cancer, right? So reducing your risk for cardiovascular disease, you're going to really benefit from that with vitamin D. And it's also a potent anti-inflammatory. And inflammation, just like insulin resistance, is one of the other things that is at the base of what's causing a lot of these metabolic diseases in our culture. So you fix the inflammation thing, you fix insulin resistance with vitamin D, you start fixing your risk for a whole lot of issues. It can be very important. Also know that inflammation is playing a part in what makes your joints achy, right? And prevents you from healing all the way. So how can you tell if you're vitamin D deficient? Lots of different ways to tell here. And one of them is mood changes. And if you're someone who 1 second you're happy and then you're like angry or sad, or you deal with anxiety, depression, bipolar, things like that, ADHD, those are all signs that you don't necessarily have an SSRI deficiency or serotonin deficiency. It could be that you have a vitamin D deficiency. And another big thing that I want to talk to a lot of people here about is bone loss. I know a lot of people in the native path community come into this community because of collagen. And collagen is extremely effective for improving the strength of your bones. But it's only one part of the puzzle. Another part of that is vitamin D. So we're really trying to get as much attention around vitamin D as we can, because we know a lot of you are trying to improve the density of your bones. Vitamin D is going to be very important for that. Another sign you're deficient is these chronic muscle cramps. A lot of people think that that's potassium deficiencies or maybe some salt deficiencies, and it can be, but it can also be vitamin D deficiency. Even if you're experiencing weakness, that can be a vitamin D deficiency. And I just mentioned the bones, but it's also joints as well. If you're someone who's dealing with joint pain and kind of the arthritis thing that just won't go away, especially in your back, that can be a sign of vitamin D deficiency. And just fatigue. If you're having issues with being tired all the time, no matter if you drink coffee all the time and you're still tired, you have to kind of artificially give yourself energy. You go to bed, all of a sudden you can't sleep and you wake up and you're still tired. Chronic fatigue, those are other signs of vitamin D deficiency. Let me see here. I'm going to check Q&A. What is a sufficient amount of vitamin D? Fran, we will get to that. Okay, so again, thank you, Fran, for your questions. And we'll go ahead and move forward. But I got some good things to share with you here. So where do we get vitamin D, right? And most of you already know this. You mostly get it from the sunshine. And that is the absolute best source of getting vitamin D, but you can also get it from certain animal products. This would be salmon, sardines, beef liver, yummy. Those are all great sources of vitamin D. You can also get it from peas and eggs and mushrooms. But those are the dietary sources of vitamin D, really pale in comparison to getting vitamin D from the sun and also from supplementing. So just know that you can eat all those foods that you want, but it really won't make as much of a difference as getting your sun exposure right and also getting the right amount of supplementation. And I'm now at the point where I believe everybody should be supplementing with vitamin D, and I'll explain why. So let's talk about the sun. and your relationship with the sun. And if you've listened to my sleep webinars, you know I'm a big fan of aligning your daytime and nighttime rhythms with the sun. So, we talk a lot about how our ancestors ate, how they moved, how they lived. And the way they lived is when the sun went up in the morning, like they came up, they woke up. They didn't have an alarm clock waking them up. It's the light from the sun literally woke them up, and they would stay awake all day. And when the sun went down, they would be present for the sun going down. And that would allow them to go to sleep pretty quickly after the sun went down. So one of the best things you can do is start aligning your day and nighttime with sun exposure. So as soon as you wake up, first thing in the morning, go outside if you can on your balcony or your porch, and just start looking outside to the sky and try to get as much natural sunlight as you can into your eyes, into your skin. It's even better if you go for a 20 and 30-minute walk in the morning and also in the evening. The best times to get sun to do this are going to be the morning and the evening, because it's going to regulate your daytime and nighttime hormones. So cortisol and melatonin, right? 20 to 30 minutes a day is ideal. If you can do that twice a day, that's even better. Like again, morning and evening, 20 to 30 minutes each time, or you can do 10 minutes each time. The key with the sun, I know we have a thing in our culture, the sun's bad, it's going to give me cancer and all these things. The sun is not bad. The sun is your absolute friend, your ally. You have to work with it though. The key with the sun exposure is you should not be getting burned, right? If you're ever getting burned, that's the type of thing that can get you skin cancer. It's just overexposing your skin to too much sun or too harsh of a sun too often is what's going to lead to that. I'm typically not a big fan of sunscreens. It's really the stuff they put in the sunscreens. If you look on that, you put it on your organ. Your skin is your biggest organ in your body. You're absorbing all those chemicals. So what I do and what I suggest is morning and evening walks. Try to expose as much of your skin as you can. Maybe women wear a sports bra. I personally go outside without a shirt on in the morning and evening and just try to get as much skin as I can. And during the day, I'll take really short walks outside, maybe like 2 to 3 minute walks down the street and back, but not too long, because that's the harsher sun that can really get you in trouble. So these are some tips right here to just get you to maximizing your relationship with the sun and getting as much natural vitamin D as you can, because it's very, very important. Remember, the key is not getting burned. But if you do that, you're going to really do some wonderful things for regulating your daytime and nighttime hormones and boost your natural vitamin D. So how much vitamin D do we need? I believe is the question we just had here. So there's a lot of different opinions on this, and the government has an opinion on this, right? So the government recommendations, in my opinion, are typically fairly weak. They recommend anywhere around 200 IUs of vitamin D3 a day. But that is not really taking into consideration what our ancestors did. Again, if you want some quick answers, some insights on what to do about your health, look in the past about how our ancestors ate, moved, and lived. And remember, they were outside all the time. they were outside all day, maybe just under some shade for a little bit. But what we know now is that our ancestors had norms of 10,000 to 20,000 IUs per day just of sun exposure. They were not supplementing. That's just sun exposures. They're outside a whole lot. So even if you're someone who says, hey, I get 20 to 30 minutes of sun a day, that's nothing in comparison to what our ancestors did, right? Some other considerations, this is where it gets a little individualized with vitamin D, is that those with darker skin pigmentations will make less vitamin D. If you have darker skin, you will need more vitamin D. If your ancestors are from the equator, you will need more vitamin D. My wife, she's Sicilian, and she has much darker skin than I do, and she needs a whole lot more vitamin D than I do in order to be where she needs to be, because her ancestors were in the sun doing all kinds of things. My ancestors were in the forest. they were under the shade pretty much all the time. So it's really individualized a bit according to where your ancestors come from. But just know, if you have darker skin pigmentation, you're going to be making less, so you'll probably need more. And if you're someone who lives more north, like Minnesota or New York or Vancouver or something like that, you also will likely need a whole lot more. Very important, especially for your mood. So before we go on, I think we might have a question here. Let's see what we got. see, Barb asks, for those of us who live north of the 51st to higher, have higher incidence of MS and vitamin D in very high doses and prescribed. Can you discuss the dynamics of this? Yeah, that's basically it, Barb, is that the more north you go, because your skin, your body's expecting more actual vitamin D, more sun exposure, but you are north, you're going to have to make up for that in a big way with really smart vitamin D supplementation. So really good question. Let's see. So let's talk about getting tested. And this is where, I myself, I have to be honest with you, I have really good health. I eat well, I exercise a lot, I get all this natural sun, I take collagen, MCT. Not long ago, I decided to get tested. I was like, I'm going to get tested and get my blood tested. I'm going to see what's going on. And I was shocked to find out that I was deficient. I was really shocked. And you can see here, I was at 27.8 nanograms per deciliter, and 90% of the population is also deficient. So this really inspired me to find a better product of vitamin D and start making our own here. And so for myself, start supplementing a whole lot more. But the thing is, I know if I'm someone who's deficient and I'm getting that much sun a day, it's very likely that most people listening and in our community are also deficient. So I really want to bring light to this and talk about testing. I'm typically not like a huge fan of tests, but when it comes to vitamin D, I've become a bigger fan of testing. So what you see at the top here are different areas of what's considered deficient, insufficient, sufficient, and what's considered excess by most practitioners. So if you go get a blood test and you're somewhere between 0 and 10 nanograms per deciliter, that's considered deficient. If you're between 10 and 30 nanograms per deciliter, that's still considered insufficient. Normal or sufficient is considered between 30 and 100 nanograms per deciliter. There's a lot of different views on what's actually ideal in that range, but that's typically considered deficient. And anything over 100 nanograms per deciliter is considered in excess. Okay. So again, what the government recommends, remember they recommended 200 IUs of vitamin D per day, which I do not feel is near enough based on our modern culture. What they recommend is 30 to 35 nanograms per deciliter being in a good range. And again, if you can see here, that's on the very low end of what's considered deficient. Again, I'm insufficient, not quite deficient. I wrote deficient there, but that's 90% of the people are in that deficient range. So it's a huge epidemic problem that most people don't know about, right? When it comes to norms and what you should be wanting, right? If you live near the equator, or if you have ancestors and you have darker skin pigmentation, where you want to be is in that 65 to 80 nanograms per deciliter. That's typically a good range to be in. It's important to know that many clinical and scientific studies suggest levels above 50 nanograms per deciliter to be protective against cancer and immunity. So again, this is above what the government recommends at 30 to 35 nanograms per deciliter. Now, when it comes to how much you should take, I'm typically conservative here, but I can tell you most people will do very well ingesting between 2,000 and 5,000 IUs per day of vitamin D. Now, how do you know if you should take 2,000 or how do you know if you should take 5,000, right? If you get your vitamin D levels tested and you're deficient or insufficient, I would definitely be moving towards that 5,000 IUs of vitamin D per day until you test again, maybe a quarter later, and then see where your norms are at, where you're at, right? If you're someone who got tested, but you have darker skin pigmentation, and like you're like at 35, which I consider low because you probably need a whole lot more, you might be better at 4,000 to 5,000 IUs per day. But if you're above 50 or around 65 or something like that, what might be better for you is just a maintenance dose of 2,000, maybe even 1,000 IUs per day, right? So how much you take really depends on, in my opinion, getting tested and knowing where you are, knowing your skin pigmentation, knowing where you are on the earth, right? Anything above 5,000, that is it. It gets a little bit more complex, and that's where I suggest you would work with a practitioner. Go to your doctor and say, hey, I've identified this thing with my deficient vitamin D levels. Sometimes doctors, if it's really deficient, they will prescribe, they will give you 10,000 IUs, 20,000, sometimes 50,000 IUs in order to make up that deficiency as quickly as possible. So big take home here is You probably need more than you think. You probably 2,000 to 5,000 IUs is ideal, but really get tested. Get tested and know where you are, because like me, I thought I'd be great. I thought I'd be somewhere in that 60 to 60, 80 range, because I get so much sun. This is someone who gets probably an hour every day of sun exposure without the shirt on, right? So if I'm low, it's likely that you're low too. And we want to make sure we get this right, because again, it's such a big part of your health, such a big part of your bone health. I know a lot of you are taking collagen. This is a big part of the puzzle. And for clarity, our vitamin D3 K2 has 1,000 IU per dropper. So what I'm doing right now is I'm taking 5 of those every day, right? 5 dropperfuls in order to get my vitamin D levels up into a normal range. And I'll check back in about a quarter and then see where we're at. So that's some good information on you there. We might have some more questions. Do darker skins make less? Oh, free. That's a good question. Darker skin pigmentations make less, and they will need to supplement with more. Okay. All right. Good questions. So now what do? I talked about getting the right sun exposure, but it's also smart supplementation with the right amount. And there's what supplement do you actually use? And, after finding out that I was deficient and understanding the big problem with vitamin D and how it's so important, we decided to come out with our own. And we feel we have the most effective vitamin D3 K2 on the market. Again, each dropper full has 1,000 IU of vitamin D. It has vitamin D3 and K2. We'll talk a little bit more about what makes those distinct and why that's different from typical vitamin D. And it also has MCT oil, which helps you absorb it. So it's, again, vitamin D helps you with strong, healthy bones, your feet, your muscles, your teeth, your muscles, your tendons, and things like that. Great for your immune system, great for cardiovascular health, mood, energy, cognition. Everything in our vitamin D is made with pure ingredients, no GMOs, gluten-free, vegan, dairy-free. Really, anytime you see the Native Path brand, you can know that our team has already done the due diligence, and it's as pure as it can possibly be. Every time we do testing and look for things, we're always looking for the purest possible supplement we can find, whether that's collagen or krill or vitamin D. Purity is our number one value, right? And what's also great about our vitamin D that I personally like, it's in liquid form. It's not in a pill form with a bunch of binders and fillers that aren't available or aren't really helpful to you. And because it's in liquid form, your body absorbs it a whole lot quicker. So let's see, we got some questions here. Let's see, Rachel, should you take them all at once or spread them throughout the day? I typically take them, and I suggest taking them all in the morning. I'll take it all in the morning. That's really the best time to take your vitamin D. How many droppers do I need? Darker skin. So Ofri, it really depends on your testing. And again, to get tested for vitamin D, your insurance can probably cover this really easy with like a $10 copay. Sometimes it's even $15 without a copay. But Ofra, I would suggest doing anywhere from 2 to 5 drops a day if you're deficient. Then I would, and if you have darker skin pigmentation, I would do 3 to 5 drops a day until you get tested again, and you see that your vitamin D levels are somewhere between 65 and 80 nanograms per deciliter. But that's where you want to make sure it is, between 65 and 80, right around there. Okay. Ofra, I love your brand. Thank you. We love our brand too. Thank you for loving our brand. Yoo-hoo. So let's see here. We'll go to the next one, because one of the questions that we get is like, well, what's different? What makes your vitamin D different than other products? Or they say the same thing about collagen. And again, it's purity, effectiveness, and bioavailability. It's not just what you take; it's how well your body actually utilizes everything you take and how potent it is, right? So our vitamin D is a high strength 1,000 IUs, right? And I would say 1,000 IUs of our vitamin D is significantly stronger than the vitamin D that you're getting from the local Eckerd's or Walgreens or something like that, for a few reasons. And one is the vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is very similar to vitamin D2, but the difference is that the vitamin D3 is much more effective and bioavailable. And the K2, vitamin K2, also radically helps improve the bioavailability. And it has 200 micrograms of vitamin K2. And everything we have is organic, GMO free. Even if you see D3, K2 products out there, you can see here what we mentioned, like most of it's not forms of vitamin K2 or D3 that's very research backed. So we really made sure we got the highest quality D3 and K2 that we could find. Also, to help with absorption, what we did is put in MCT oil, right? Cold pressed, antioxidant rich MCT oil. And that is also organic. But what you're going to find in the other products out there is they're going to use polyunsaturated fats, things like safflower oil, even who knows, canola oil, whatever they put in there. But those things should, under our feelings at Native Path, should never be consumed. It's a very cheap oil, and it's what you'll find in a lot of the other products out there. Highly toxic, highly inflammatory. It's not what you want to be putting in your body. So really be careful about looking at labels. But we don't put any unnecessary ingredients, no preservatives, flavors, fillers. Everything is just pure. And again, those pill forms of vitamin D3, K2, there's typically a lot of very unnecessary binders and fillers that slow down the digestion and absorption process. It's really about how well your body digests and absorbs the vitamin D3. Ours is also produced in a good manufacturing practice facility. It's third-party inspected, and a lot of the stuff out there, unfortunately, in the supplement world, as you know, it's not very well regulated. So the people who make the supplements really have to regulate it themselves. But a lot of the other stuff, just there's no manufacturing processes at all. And this, again, this goes with not just vitamin D here at Native Path, but all of our products go through these very stringent, very strict processes to make sure we're getting the absolute best products that we can for you. So I'm going to answer some questions here in a minute. Again, Rachel from the private group sourced some really great questions, so please stick around for those. And if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. I'll get to them. But before I get to those questions, thank you and congratulations for watching. So here's our gift from our team to you. So you have earned 25% off your entire order at nativepath.com. You can see here down at number 4, there's a special coupon code for you. Webinar 25, webinar 25, all caps. So you can go to nativepath.com, shop around. I highly suggest, if you haven't done it already, just load up on some vitamin D, like load up and get 25% off. But you can get not just vitamin D, you can get more collagen, or you can try krill or some of our creamers or native greens or whatever you want. But whatever you order, however big that ticket is, you're going to get 25% off. So that's a huge amount of savings. So again, all you got to do is nativepath.com, webinar 25, find whatever you want. You can even screenshot this so you don't lose that. But that's our way of saying thank you for just watching and staying informed on your own health. So let me get some questions here that Rachel sourced for me. And again, if you want to put your questions in the Q&A, that would be great. And I'll get to those. So the first question comes from Stacy. What's up, Stacy? How you doing? What's the difference between vitamin D and vitamin D3, if any? And typically when people say vitamin D, they're typically talking about vitamin D2. That's sometimes people will just say vitamin D, and it's typically D2. So it's important to know that both D2 and D3 need to be converted by the liver and then by the kidneys into the main form of vitamin D that circulates the body, right? But the difference here, and this is why we chose vitamin D3 in our product, is that it appears to more effectively raise our levels of active vitamin D than D2, right? So it's really important to know that D3 is really what you're looking for. It's more potent. It's also more bioavailable. So good question, Stacy. And the next one comes from Debbie. And Debbie asked, does vitamin D help with the immune system? Yes, it does. I mentioned this during the talk. But vitamin D plays a role in the body's immune system because it's known to enhance the function of the immune cells, right? Decreases inflammation as well, which is important for your immune system. So, a lot of people have been asking us, what do we do about this pandemic? Vitamin D. Native defense is also a great one, but vitamin D is like number 1, right? Next question is from Rita. And she asked, can I take too much vitamin D, and what's the best amount to take? And yes, you can take too much. It's anything in excess can have a problem. And it's important to know that the symptoms of too much vitamin D, that would be typically called vitamin D toxicity, but that can feel like nauseousness, vomiting, sudden weakness, frequent urination, but it's really hard to do. It's really hard to take too much vitamin D. And again, this all comes down to knowing the right amount for you. And again, the safe range is 2 to 5,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. You're going to be really safe in that. Not anybody's going to get in trouble with that. The problem would be like if you started taking 50,000 IUs a day and you're already in excess, but the simple answer is really get tested, find out where you're at. And if you're on the lower end of things, maybe 5,000 a day. If you're in a good spot, maybe 2,000 a day is really good for you. Or if you're from the higher end of the good area, you're still sufficient, maybe that's around 1,000 a day, right? So everybody's going to be a little bit different, again, according to your skin pigmentation and where you are on the earth. If you're more in northern climates, you're going to need more darker skin pigmentation. You'll need more as well, right? Edna asked, is it necessary to take vitamin D with calcium? Very good question, Edna. And I'm glad you brought up the calcium thing. A lot of people come into our community with the intention to improve their bones, and they ask about how much calcium to take. And I will be straight up, I am not a fan at all of calcium supplementation. In the United States, we supplement with more calcium than like any other country, but we have some of the highest rates of osteoporosis and osteopenia. Calcium is not the answer to improving your bone density issues, right? Calcium has issues itself. It can lead to a lot of problems with heart problems, can lead to a lot of kidney stones. It's really not the best thing to supplement with. And there's other ways to make your bones stronger, because that's what you really want. It's not necessarily a calcium deficiency problem. More so has to do with a calcium absorption problem because of a lack of vitamin D. So calcium helps your body absorb, vitamin D helps your body absorb more calcium into your blood. So it's really important to know that. Other things that are going to help you here would be collagen, obviously. Magnesium is a big one, natural sun exposure, vitamin D, and weight-bearing exercise. Those are the most important. And when I say weight-bearing exercise, I'm talking about something simple like taking some dumbbells and just walking 50 yards, taking some dumbbells that it just feels kind of heavy, but it's not so heavy that you break your posture, right? That could be like 5 pounds, 10 pounds, maybe 20 pounds on each side. Walking with a perfect posture, even strides down the street and back, right? That force is what's going to help make your bones stronger. If it's kind of like gravity. If you went to outer space where there's no gravity, you hang out there for a while, your bones will get weak, right? You put force on your bones, gravity and weight, that's going to make your bones stronger. So resistance, weight-bearing exercise, vitamin D, magnesium, those are the things that are going to make the most difference, and collagen to your bone health, but not calcium. Lots of problems with calcium. And it's also important to know that the government puts fortified calcium in our foods, not the good foods either. So things like OJ, bread, cereals, crackers, all those have fortified calcium in there. It's not really a good idea to eat those foods either. But that's the general way you want to be thinking about how to improve your bone health. Carol asked, my rheumatologist told me to take magnesium for my leg cramps. I'm 72. How many milligrams should I be taking? So for leg cramps, magnesium, probably around 400 to 800 milligrams. Is a good amount to take. We will be coming out with some native path magnesium soon because I'm such a big fan of it. But don't forget about vitamin D. Vitamin D is also a big thing that's going to help you with your cramps as well. So stay hydrated. In those cases too, I suggest adding a little pinch of salt to your water. That can be very important. Those things are about 400 to 800 milligrams per day be really good for you. So thank you, Carol. Victoria asks, or she states, I sit in the sun without sunblock for 20 minutes a couple of times a week. Is that enough? And like I was saying throughout no, it's not. Because I would do 60 minutes a day every day with my shirt off without sunblock. I thought that was enough. I got tested. I was at 27. So it might be enough, but it's probably not. It's probably not. And when it comes to sun exposure, I would suggest making it more of a daily pattern than just 2 times a week. Again, because of the benefit that it gives you to your hormones and regulating that circadian rhythm, your daytime and nighttime hormones. Again, hormones tell your body what to do. When it's in harmony with nature, with the sun, with vitamin D, all the right messages are going throughout your body. When it's not, everything's haywire, right? So another question from Debbie, I'm wondering if K2 can contribute to blood clotting. Anybody know? It's a good question from Debbie. And you'll find that at K2, there's a whole lot of it might be a problem. But that's at Hypercoagulation for K2 typically occurs when you're taking like 15 micrograms a day or milligrams a day, right? And the vitamin D3 K2 that we have, the K2, it only has 200 micrograms. You're talking about a very, very small amount that is not going to be in a harmful range for you. So you have nothing to worry about with a small amount of K2 relative to what's actually problematic with K2. We just put the K2 in there to help with absorption, but you're nowhere near any harmful range with 200 micrograms compared to 15 milligrams, which is the area that is more problematic. So let's see, we got a question here. In Florida, how long is good? So Ofra, I'm assuming you're talking about sun exposure. So in Florida, kind of the same thing as Texas, I would say 20 to 30 minutes. But again, Ofra, in the morning, in the evening. If you're asking how long to take vitamin D at like a 5 IU level, I would say try it for at least a quarter, right? Try it for like 3 to 4 months and then get tested again and then see where you're at. That's really the ultimately best way to do it. Again, the tests are only like $10, $15 with copay. But get tested, find out where you are, supplement accordingly, and then go back with another test another quarter later, see where you're at, and you can modify. But again, safe ranges, 2,000 to 5,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. If you're super deficient, if that's what the test reveals, really consult with your doctor. They may even have you take more than that. Okay, so that is all the questions I believe I have here. But if anybody has any more questions, feel free to leave them in the chat, or you can always email our customer experience team at CE, or really at support@nativepath.com is probably that's what the email address they want you to use. So support@nativepath.com. And remember, use the promo code webinar25. That's good for anything, not just for stocking up on a whole lot of vitamin D, but you can stock up on anything you want. And of course, the more you get, the more you save. But for the purposes of inspiration and vitamin D, let's get that vitamin D. And I'm so passionate about it. And like I said, I'm doing this for myself. I'm trying to up my vitamin D so I can feel even better, because I feel great. But I'm doing the same thing for the whole Native Path team. We had a Monday call last Monday, and I gave the same presentation to them, everybody in the Native Path team that I'm giving you. And we're getting everybody in the Native Path team to start taking vitamin D and getting tested and improving this, because again, it's such a big part of what's missing in our modern culture, just like collagen, just like our ancestors were on some things that we're forgetting about in our modern culture. The way they ate, the way they moved, the way they lived, we can learn a whole lot from them. They ate nose to tail. They got plenty of collagen in their natural diets, but we don't get it in our modern diets, right? Same thing with vitamin D. Our ancestors were out getting plenty of sun, getting 10,000 to 20,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. We are simply not getting enough, and we have weak immune systems across the board, across the globe. This is a perfect example of why a pandemic can come in and make everybody sick. This is a perfect example of why everybody has bone problems and heart problems, right? You fix your vitamin D problem, you start fixing a lot of those problems. So hope you enjoyed that. Thank you all for attending so much. Thank you for being a part of the Native Path community and just taking an interest in your health today and watching this webinar. I really enjoyed it. We plan on doing many more. So your feedback is always appreciated. Apologize for any technical difficulties with the Q&A, but we're doing our best. So hope you guys enjoyed that and you have a wonderful day. And I'll go ahead and end there, but we will see you next time. Yoo-hoo! Okay, everybody. Bye-bye.